This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone. I am Pete Panito, First Northern Credit Union's Business Development Contact. We have Director of Sales, David Tognarelli, presenting today's webinar, Finances for New Families. Everyone should have received the handout that was emailed earlier this afternoon. If you don't have it, let me know in the chat box and I will resend it to you. This presentation is part of our weekly financial wellness series in partnership with the City of Evanston. We will follow up with an email tomorrow with additional materials that will be presented today. In addition to the partnership we have with the city, First Northern Credit Union continues our free monthly financial wellness webinars as well. We have the webinar Understanding Credit tomorrow night. If you'd like information on that webinar, it's one of our more requested ones. Let me know and I will send you sign-up information throughout the webinar. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat box, and David will address them at the end of the presentation. We appreciate you joining us today, and with that, I turn the microphone over to Mr. Tognarelli. It's all yours, David.
Great, thank you for that resounding introduction, Pete, and welcome everyone to tonight's webinar on finances for new families. So the goal of the webinar tonight is to give new families the knowledge needed to take charge of your money and put a plan into place to make it work toward your goals. So the webinar does have two sections. The first is for the newly married, and the second is for those who have recently had a baby or are planning to do so. Okay, so let's start off with an introduction and talk about why it matters. So having a plan in place for your family's finances matters because you are building a foundation for the future. Putting good habits in place now, like setting aside money for retirement and emergency savings, is definitely easier than trying to undo bad habits later. We're also trying to reduce risk of problems later. Like the old saying reminds us, failing to plan is planning to fail. While almost everyone experiences difficult financial times at some point in your life, by being prepared for those problems that arise, you can keep them as minor bumps along the way instead of major derailments. Also, harnessing the power of time is important. So as a new family, many of your goals are probably at least a few years in the future. This is a huge advantage for you since it allows you to take advantage of compound interest to turn a little bit of money each month into a lot down the road. So one of the most important things for a new family to do is to talk about and establish goals. This will help to guarantee that both partners are on the same page and that it is clear what your money is working for. So I encourage everyone to check out the financial goal sheet on page 7 of the handout and consult with your partner to write down a financial goal that you would like to accomplish in 1 year. So it's important when you're putting together your financial goals to make sure that they are SMART. So the acronym SMART represents S-M-A-R-T, S being for specific. So being secure isn't a goal one can plan for. That's kind of vague. Whereas a more specific goal would be having $20,000 in an emergency savings account. Next, it's important for those goals to be measurable. So to stay on track with your goal, you need to be able to check in and see how you are doing. Avoid mentally earmarking money. Instead, put it in a separate account. Next, as part of our SMART goals, they should be attainable. So a pie-in-the-sky dream of a goal isn't going to do you any good. Take a look at your budget and see what you can really afford to put aside each month. Second to last, you want to make sure that your goals are realistic. For example, if you live in Alaska, savings to put in a swimming pool might not be your best investment. So think about the big picture ramifications of your goal when you're putting them together. Finally, your goals should be time-bound. So they need to have an end date. Otherwise, they become vague and hazy, and they can run the risk of never becoming reality. So when you have a chance, fill out the short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals on the goal chart. And for each goal, you should think about what tools you are going to use to achieve them, and if there are any obstacles to the goal that you might need to remove. Okay, so next we're going to talk about a spending and savings plan. So creating a spending, savings plan is job number one for a new family trying to seize control of their finances. This begins with understanding the combined monthly income figure. So in the handout on the monthly income worksheet on page 10, you can use that to come up with your monthly income figure. The next step is to get a grasp on what you are and will be spending each month. So for that, you can check out the weekly expense worksheet and monthly expense worksheet located on pages 8 to 9 of the handout. It's best to try to track your expenses over a full month since many expenses don't happen on a weekly basis. Some ways to track those expenses can include keeping receipts, making all purchases on a check or credit card, or using a mobile device app to track your expenses through your online or mobile banking. Family finances should always involve teamwork. So you should make a commitment to looking at your income and expenses together and make sure your money is achieving for you what you want it to. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some suggested budget guidelines. So it can be helpful to consider the listed budgetary guidelines in the slide here when trying to determine if your expenditures are in line with the typical figures. So these numbers on the slide may not reflect everyone's situation. Everyone's situation is definitely individual for them and could vary slightly. For example, if you live in a rural area, you may not spend as much on housing, but you may spend more on transportation. Also, through our partnership with Balance in the city of Evanston, there are counselors available that can help you with free money management counseling. And we'll talk a little bit more about where you can locate those resources at the end of the webinar. Okay, so some advantages to being married. It may not be high on the list of reasons to get married, but being wed does come with some built-in financial advantages. It's important to know that being married may impact your taxes, your health and auto insurance, your housing costs, service and membership plans, and finally, vehicle expenses. So it's key for newly married couples to brainstorm ways to use their new status to free up some money that can go toward their financial goals. Each category on the expense sheet that I pointed out could be used to examine for potential savings. Okay, let's talk a little bit about credit. So if you haven't done so since becoming married, you should access your free annual credit report by either calling 877-322-8228 or by visiting the website www.annualcreditreport.com. So this website entitles you to one copy of your credit report from each of the 3 bureaus once a year. And these are the sources of the free credit reports we are all entitled to by federal law. So it's important to get the reports from this phone number or website since others may come with charges or could potentially be scams. Now, once you have your credit report from the 3 bureaus, you should definitely check it for inaccuracies. And anything that is not accurate, you should report back to the credit bureaus. Then you should have a plan in place for dealing with any negative items. You should also seek ways to add positive information to your credit report moving forward. So it's very important for you to understand what credit requirements your goals will have, such as a certain credit score that you might need to attain or working on a plan to pay down debt. And if anyone wants to sit down with a representative from the credit union, we do offer free credit report reviews. So please reach out to Pete or myself, and we'll be happy to schedule an appointment for you. Okay, so assigning responsibilities. So remember that one of the biggest or best ways to avoid conflicts or unforeseen problems in the future is to have a checks and balances division of labor in your marriage when it comes to money. Having just one person controlling the money could possibly lead to misunderstandings or even resentment. A safer system is to have both partners take a regular look in at the financial numbers. If you have separate accounts, make a commitment to communicate with your partner about any key changes you make to your accounts. It helps to have a talk about what you each feel are your respective strengths, and then to divide the responsibilities in the financial household accordingly. Okay, paperwork. Everyone loves paperwork, right? So the early years of family life are a great time to get important paperwork out of the way. You should consult with an attorney or an estate planning professional or a financial advisor to establish or update the following: a will, a power of attorney, and beneficiary information for retirement, investment, or insurance accounts. If you're not married yet, you could also potentially discuss with your partner if you would like to create a prenuptial agreement. Okay, communication and teamwork. So money for the married isn't a fix it and forget it type thing. It requires ongoing teamwork. So try to set up a time once a month to talk about bills, expenses, progress towards your goals, or any other important money issues. And then make a commitment to being a good sharer and listener and working together to achieve your goals as a team. Okay, so we're moving on to part 2, considering child, a new addition to the family and your finances. So for those who are expecting a child or would like to have one in the coming months or years, it's definitely never too soon to start planning for the financial impact of the baby. In addition to understanding what the insurance coverage is for the birth and for the baby, it's of vital importance to have a financial plan in place for what will happen after the baby is born. A newborn is a handful, and you don't need money worries to add to the stress of this busy but very happy time. Now, probably the best way to make sure the money is there for the months after the baby is born is to create a budget for the full first year after the baby is born. Take into account what the mother's income might be during this time and how that could impact covering the extra expenses of having another mouth to feed, diapers to buy, or other additional expenses. As part of doing a baby budget, also look for ways to cut expenses. Not only will this help to cover the basics for the baby, but it will also assist with creating savings to deal with any unexpected costs that may come up. Okay, now we're back to a spending and savings plan. So if you're unsure of what new expenses you might incur after having a baby, you can use the baby budget checklist, which is located in the checklist and chart section of evanston.balancepro.com. And we'll talk a little bit more about that website at the end of the webinar here. So if mom is going to take away time from work, it also might be wise to create a budget both for the period away from work and then the period after mom returns. Making ends meet. So there are several tips for making ends meet after the baby has arrived. And those include buying items as needed to avoid buying things ahead of time that won't be used, waiting to buy items until after gifts from friends and relatives have been received. This can also help to avoid waste due to duplication. Asking friends or relatives who have had a child in the past few years if you can help them out by taking some of the baby items that they no longer use off of their hands. And then looking at personal decisions like perhaps breastfeeding instead of buying formula. Now, for those parents who are struggling to cover all the costs, it's also important to check for local or state programs that can help. Check with your local social services offices for more information on that. Okay, anytime a new member is added to the family, it's also important to establish or update those important documents we talked about before, like a will or trust. This can help make sure that the baby is taken care of no matter what happens to the parents. You should also contact your insurance providers to make sure that your policy and beneficiary details are up to date. Okay, taxes, one of those inevitable things in life that we all have to think about. So a meeting with your tax professional is another key step to take after you have a child. Your tax situation could be altered significantly by your recent addition. So be sure to ask the tax professional about both the child credit and the child care credit that you may be entitled to when filing your personal income tax returns. College savings, saving for when the baby grows up and enters adulthood. So it may seem extremely early to start thinking about college for your child, but again, it's important to harness that power of time. So as shown by the example on this slide, just $50 a month can become quite a large sum of money by the time your child is ready to graduate college or is ready to enter college. That money could come from making coffee at home instead of buying it from a coffee shop, watching movies on TV, and there's lots of great options through those streaming channels these days, instead of going out to the movies. And I'm sure you can think of many other ways to set aside that $50 per month. There are several ways to save money for college, including custodial accounts, 529 plans, and Coverdell education savings accounts. And those are available at the credit union, so please inquire with Pete or myself if you would like to check out those options. Okay, a little bit about resources. So through our partnership with the City of Evanston, we've set up a website at evanston.balancepro.org that has many resources for you to check out, including that checklist I mentioned earlier. So there's lots of videos, podcasts, articles, webinars on demand. Be sure to check those out. You can also consult with their free financial counselors on services including money management counseling, debt repayment options, those free credit report reviews, and more. And that concludes tonight's presentation on finances for new families.
Perfect. David, we have a couple questions. Let me see. I really need help with a budget. Do you have a service that helps with that?
Yes, absolutely. So please share your information with Pete through the chat box. You can send him a private message or reply to the email he sent you. And one of our financial service advisors at the credit union will be happy to sit down with you and talk through how to create a budget specific to you.
Perfect. Do I go to the credit bureau to resolve an issue, or do I go directly to the company?
It's actually best to do both. So if it is your own existing account, you should start with the company, dispute it through them. If it's a fraudulent account, you should definitely start with the credit bureau through a written letter that you track through certified mail to dispute the inaccurate information on your credit report. And the counselors at evanston.balancepro.org have lots of great templates for those letters and can walk you through the process of disputing inaccurate information on your credit report.
Okay, perfect. And the last one here, can you explain what a 529 plan is?
Yeah, so a 529 plan is a tax-sheltered savings plan where oftentimes they come with preferred interest rates, so they earn additional interest, and tax advantages as well. They need to be used specifically for educational expenses for the child as they grow up later in life.
Perfect. And that was it. That was the last question. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We always hope you walk away with a little bit more knowledge on the subject that we present. And we hope at the very least that it reminds you of some basics that you already know. And we will follow up tomorrow with the PowerPoint presented today. And please email any questions that you may have. I will let David have the final word, but I just want to wish everyone the best of health, wealth, and positivity. Thank you, and have a great rest of the week, you guys. David?
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We hope you can join us next week for Planning for Money Milestones. And then the week after, on June 24th, we'll be presenting on Raising a Money Smart Kid. So please take advantage of these free webinars and all the resources at evanston.balancepro.org. And like Pete said, try to smile, stay happy, healthy, positive, and let the credit union know if there's anything we can do to help you out.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.